Welcome to part 2 of Let's Play The Rings of Kether by Andrew Chapman. At the end of the last part, I was on paragraph 151. Let's reread this paragraph as a quick reminder. Okay, you find yourself in a plush room, either a library or a study. Books on real wooden shelves line the walls. There is real wooden furniture, heavy and smoky with long years. Behind a massive desk sits an equally massive but certainly uglier woman. She smiles gap-toothed at you. You gave us quite a turn, you did, dropping out of space all unexpected like. Isn't that so, boys? She looks around at the other gangsters who are lolling about on the rest of the furniture, cigarettes dangling from their lips and bleary, boozy eyes fixed uninterestedly on you. Yeah, they answer. We don't have federal investigators visiting our little planet at all often, do we, boys? She asks again. Nah. Suddenly she leans forward, staring at you. Her voice is icy. You have two choices, Nark. Either you go to a meeting that we've arranged for you to pick up a box of documents for us, or else. Will you agree to go to the meeting, turn to 35, or take the or else, turn to 112? Okay, we're going to go to the meeting and turn to 35. The meeting they have arranged for you is with Mrs. Taurus, wife of Clive Taurus, one of their ex-buddies. They take you to the glass houses in the enormous botanic gardens of Kether's capital city. The documents the punk driver of the black ground sloop you are in... I'll say that again. The documents the punk driver of the black ground sloop in which you are, explains, are in a safety deposit box. She'll have them for you. They park behind a glass house, show you where Mrs. Taurus is standing, and push you from the car. Turn to 376. You walk towards her. Mrs. Taurus, you say. She turns, but at that moment, two shots ring out from a copse of trees to your left. One slams into Mrs. Taurus, the other into you. Throw one die and deduct the result from your stamina. If you survive, continue. Okay, so we're rolling one die. There we go. Alright, and we get a 2. That's quite good. So we deduct 2 from our stamina, which puts me down to 20 stamina. There we go. You both fall to the ground, Mrs. Taurus dropping the bag she was carrying. The safety deposit box with the incriminating documents falls out. Before you can react, the sniper dashes over, grabs the box, and leaps into a sloop, which squeals off. A sloop, by the way, is a small sailing boat. Don't know how it applies to roads and stuff, because it's a boat that's for, water, but this is futuristic, so... we just have to take it as it comes, really. Anyway, I'll say that again. You both fall to the ground, Mrs. Taurus dropping the bag she was carrying. The safety deposit box with the incriminating documents falls out. Before you can react, the sniper dashes over, grabs the box, and leaps into a sloop, which squeals off. What a setup. You lurch to your feet. Will you attempt to chase the sloop, turn to 191, or aid Mrs. Taurus, turn to 210? Okay, we're going to attempt to chase the sloop and turn to 191. Okay, you run out onto the road, narrowly being missed by a carload of picnickers out for a jolly time in the gardens. The black sloop is tearing down the street past another car which is heading towards you. Will you shoot at the villain's car, turn to 152, or try to flag the other car down so as to give chase, turn to 113? Okay, we're going to flag the other car down to give chase, 113. Okay, I think this picture applies to us. It's a bit like the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Hey, Doc! Marty! That's my Back to the Future impression. Anyway, the driver, in response to your frantic waving, pulls over to the side of the road. What? He asks in astonishment when you drag him from the car. Hey, wait, he yells when you hurl his vehicle into a wide arc and set off after the escaping villains. Looks like you've had a bit of luck anyway, as the ground car in which you are is a small, powerful six-wheeled sports model with twin gas turbines. Should be able to pull a few 100 kilometers an hour with this, which is 300 times 5/8, which is 187.5. So I'll say that again. Should be able to pull 187.5 miles an hour with this. You flick on the traffic radar, picking the sloop up ahead, and accelerate to 200 kph. 200 times 5/8. 125. Okay. You flick on the traffic radar, picking the sloop up ahead, and accelerate to 125 miles per hour. If you stop to shoot before waving this car down, turn to 387. Otherwise, turn to 202. Okay, we did not, so we're turning to 202. Here we go. The sloop flies down the straight and disappears over a hump-backed hill. You cannot see what happens to the road past the crest. Will you assume that the road continues straight and take the crest at high speed, turn to 309, or will you anticipate a corner and slow down a bit, turn to 163? Okay, we're going to anticipate a corner and slow down a bit, turn to 163. You brake just in time, for there, over the crest, is a tight hairpin bend. The sports car's 6 wheels squeals slightly as it whips around the corner and flies on to a long, straight downhill slope. Blimey, that's quite a tongue twister. The sloop is about 100 yards in front. Will you push the car faster, turn to 115, or stay at your present speed, turn to 124? Okay, we're going to push the car faster and turn to 115. Okay, the turbines give a magnificent amount of power, pushing you effortlessly down the slope to within 3 yards of the sloop. You start pounding on your horn to unnerve them. The 2 cars dive into a wood. The road becomes quite curvy, necessitating a reduction in speed. You could try to ram the car from behind and send it into a tree. It is a heavier vehicle than yours and will probably be harder to control in these conditions. Will you try to push it off the road, turn to 222, or not, turn to 76? We are not, so turn to 76. You pursue the sloop through the forest, your bumpers almost touching. Suddenly, the forest disappears and the road is in the open, going up a raised embankment. Will you try to draw up next to them, turn to 310, or ram them from behind, turn to 27? Okay, we are going to try to draw up next to them, so turn to 310. There we go. The car's turbines whine softly as you eke out the extra revs necessary to bring you alongside the criminal's car. You do so slowly. Will you try to shoot at them, turn to 291, or push them off the raised road with a side swipe, turn to 252? Okay, we're going to try to shoot at them and turn to 291. Okay, the air blast from winding down your window makes it extremely difficult to aim, and the extra drag imposed on your car from this action means that the sloop begins to pull away from you. You put your gun away, wind up the window, and fall back behind the sloop again. Turn to 37. The sloop is only a few yards ahead of you when it comes to an S-bend. The big car slops clumsily into the corner, far too fast. Here's your chance. As they go around, will you ram them in the back, turn to 135, or hit them in the side, turn to 396? Okay, we're going to ram them in the back and turn to 135. Your car leaps forward and smashes into the rear of the sloop, giving the necessary impetus to send it out of control. It fishtails off the road and then flips over and over and over, violently rolling to a halt 100 yards further on. You pull over to the side of the road, turn to 359. A little bit like Chase HQ, isn't it? Leaving your own vehicle, you approach the wrecked sloop. Looking inside, you can see that nobody survived. You recover the safety deposit box and open it. Inside are lots of incriminating documents regarding 2 individuals, Zera Gross and Blaster Babbitt. There are bills for the raw materials necessary to produce Satophil D, amounts paid in bribes to various officials, and, what's most important, the location of their receiving facility on Kether. Evidently, the drug arrives from space via shuttle at a little island some 2,500 miles off the shore of the main continental landmass. It is stored there until sent to the starport on Kether for shipment out of system. The box even contains the exact coordinates of the island facility. Turn to 330. You know I like converting to miles because imperial measurements, they're just better, aren't they? I always consider the metric system, which I hate, by the way, as sort of artificial. It's just sort of artificial. I've just never liked it. Although I do know more about the metric system than so-called proponents of the metric system. I know all the prefixes. I know all the maths. I know all the standard form conversions, and I know lots of the SI units. And yet I don't actually like it. I prefer imperial. The metric system is sort of artificial and dead. It's just sort of, I don't know, I can't really explain it. I've just never liked it. Never liked it. Anyway, 330. You hire a long-range helijet and fly out to the tiny vegetation-covered island. As you circle over it, you spot a large clearing containing a launch pad for shuttles, 2 landing bays for helijets, and an anti-grav dray. One of the helijet bays is occupied. You land your aircraft in the other bay and climb out. Now that you are closer, you can see 3 ramps spaced equally around the helijet bays, descending into the ground. 2 of the ramps end in quite ordinary-looking entrances, while the third finishes in a large freight door. Will you enter one of the ordinary entrances, turn to 311 or 301, the freight door, turn to 67, or take a look at the anti-grav dray and turn to 281. Okay, this is the picture that goes with this paragraph, I think. There we are, that's where we are. Okay, now, you do have some options there. There's no, what I'm saying, obviously there's options, but there's no one right way. You know, you can either go an easy path or a harder path. I think the easier path is 311, so I'm going to go to 311, but it doesn't matter if you take the harder one. I think that's going to the anti-grav dray or something. So, you know, you can go either way, but as long as you don't take the one of the wrong ones, obviously. Anyway, so we're turning to 311, which is one of the ordinary entrances, so 311. Okay, the ramp ends in a door which opens as you approach. In front is a long corridor occupied by a 3 feet wide saucer-shaped robot. A flickering red eye on its rim contemplates you. A cluster of blasters set in its underside threaten. It hangs in the air noiselessly. Word of the day, it demands. You make a guess. Which will it be? Tuesday, turn to 155. Satophil, turn to 194. Wrench, turn to 272. Or Babbitt, turn to 233. Okay, now we have to make a guess. That's what it says. So we've got 1 out of 4 probability of getting this right. Well, I don't, because I know what it is, but if you didn't, then you'd have 0.25 probability of getting this right. But it is wrench, so we're going to be turning to 272. Okay, that's at what we're looking. There we are. Anyway, turn to 272. Whoops. Okay, you say the first thing that springs to mind. Wrench, the machine hums a bit and floats into a recess in the ceiling. Pass, turn to 77. I mean, if you guess that, that should be really lucky, and you should get some luck points for that, I think. You know, if you just guess that, the first word that comes to your head is actually the password. I mean, how many words are there? I mean, thousands and thousands. Tens of thousands, and you guessed it right. The first word that comes to your head. It could have been door. It could have been dust, particle. It could have been Termite, anything. I don't know why I said termite, but it just could have been anything. Oh yeah, I know why I said termite. I was watching a thing on YouTube yesterday where someone was making clay from a termite mound. Anyway, that's still sort of hanging in my head for some reason. Anyway, it's funny how the mind works, isn't it? Anyway, so pass and turn to 70. Anyway, I'll say that again. You say the first thing that springs to mind, wrench. The machine hums a bit and floats into a recess in the ceiling. Pass, turn to 77. You pass down the corridor and come to an intersection. Will you continue down the corridor, turn to 340, or turn up the side passage, turn to 379? We are going to turn up the side passage and turn to 379. The passage leads to a room. In the centre, hanging in mid-air, is a large square plastic table, the latest thing in anti-gravity furniture, evidently. A chair, similarly without legs, hovers next to it. When you enter the room, this chair floats over and says, "Hi, want to sit on me?" Pathetic device. But you see it's only being nice. I mean, it's not that pathetic. It's just, it's just trying to offer you a seat. I mean, there's worse things it could do, to be honest. Anyway, you see a key with a large cardboard tag attached to it lying on the chair. Picking it up, you read, Zera, this is for shutting down the reactor at base 1. Keep it safe, blaster. You pocket it. There's nothing else in the room, so you go back to the intersection and down the corridor. Turn to 340. Okay, we have a key. So let's put that in our equipment. We have key for shutting down reactor. And shutting has 2 T's. I don't know why I didn't put 2 there. Anyway, that would be shooting, although not spelled, not like the homophone shooting. Anyway, homophone is a word that sounds the same as another. Anyway, so hour and hour, they're homophones, but they're different words because one means the unit of time and the other one is the possessive pronoun of first person plural. Anyway, what am I doing? I don't even know what I'm saying. Anyway, you pocket it. There's nothing else in the room, so you go back to the intersection and down the corridor, turn to 340. Okay, the corridor leads to an automatic door, which sighs open as you approach and clangs shut after you go through. You are in another corridor. On one side, this corridor ends in a door. On the other, it continues until it disappears around a corner. Will you go through the door, turn to 67, or down the passageway? Okay, we are going to go down the passageway and turn to 253. Okay, the corridor leads you to an octagonal room. Standing in the centre, contemplating you with at least 4 of its 7 electronic sensors, is a chrome and silver robot, obviously of alien design and manufacture. Welcome, it sighs, rising up on its 7 articulated legs and extending a few antennae and microwave sensors in your direction. Then it continues. Okay, before I read the riddle, yes, it is pronounced antennae. It's not antennae. It's just when you have a plural, that's AE, like antennae, larvae, vertebrae, it's pronounced E. It's not A. It really annoys me. I mean, so many people have said mistakenly vertebrae that it's now accepted as a proper pronunciation. It's not vertebrae. It's 1 vertebra and 2 vertebrae. It's AE. It's like larva and larvae and antenna and antennae. All it took for me to work that out when I was little was a quick check in the dictionary for the guide for pronunciation, and instantly, then I knew forever. I knew then that people saying vertebrae were incorrect. It's vertebrae. It's just. I just don't understand why people don't know the logic of it. I mean, it just makes perfect sense to me. It's AE is not I. It's E. That's how it's pronounced. Anyway, then it continues. Red I am, the heart of a scorpion, yet not of Arachnia at all. Pincers I have, but I grasp with the unseen. In one word, what am I? With which letter of the alphabet does the answer begin? Is it A, 10 to 214? Is it S, 10 to 175? Or is it X, 10 to 136? Now, if you know your astronomy, which in this case I do, you will know that the answer is Antares. Now, that's because Antares is a star in the Scorpius constellation, and it's known colloquially as the heart of a scorpion because it's in the Scorpius. It's in the Scorpius constellation, I think. Or is it Scorpius or Scorpio? I'm sort of confused now. Yep, it is Scorpius. I just looked it up. Yeah, it is Scorpius. Yeah, so it's in the Scorpius constellation, and it's known as the heart of a scorpion. And if you like your astronomy, then you'll know it's red. To the naked eye, it's red. And obviously the pincers refers to the Scorpius thing. Grasp with the unseen, because it's a constellation. They're not really pincers, it's a constellation. And in one word, what am I? It's Antares, one of the stars. I'm not really big on astronomy, but I did know that. Anyway, so it begins with A, and so we're turning to 214. Antares, you answer. The machine lowers itself to the floor and says, just before shutting itself down, correct, pass. Turn to 58. Off we go. Okay, leaving the room by another corridor, you come to a T-junction. To the left and right, the corridor splits and heads into dim yellow light before turning from view. Will you go left? Turn to 360, or right, turn to 9. We are going to go left and turn to 360. Okay, the corridor leads to a door. It has a brass plate. Yeah, a brass plate attached to it. Zera gross. The door opens as you approach, and there in a room behind a large desk, dictating to a little robot secretary. She is. Fat, gap-toothed, and horrible. Yeah, she says, not looking at you, obviously thinking you're one of her henchmen. What do you want? Yeah, repeats the secretary, scribbling frantically. What do you... Shut up, dummy. She shrieks at it. I'm speaking to her. She notices who you are. Him. She makes a dive for a blaster on top of the desk. Will you engage her in a gunfight, turn to 321, or in hand-to-hand combat, turn to 282? I'm going to go with the gunfight, just sounds more fun. 321. But you can engage her in hand-to-hand combat, but, you know, just rather do a gunfight. Anyway, you fire at each other. Zera, skill 8, stamina 11. If you defeat her, 10 to 165. Okay. So, we're fighting someone, so we're fighting Zera. Skill 8, stamina 11. There we go. Okay, now, how do I do a gunfight again? Okay, well, I'm 321, but I have to remember how to do a gunfight because I can't remember. Okay, 321. Blaster combat. Yeah. Okay, roll 2 dice. So if the result is higher than your skill, I've missed. Okay, so my skill is 12. Okay. Oh yeah, because I sort of cheat, don't I? I always figured I'd do that. Okay, my skill is 12. So let's roll 2 dice. This is not going to be above 12, is it? So it's 10. So that's below 12. Okay. So we've hit our foe and inflicted damage on it. And she's an it, apparently. Deduct 4 points from your opponent's stamina. Okay, so that was good. So That puts her down to 7. Okay. Okay, now we do your fire will be returned. Roll 2 dice. If the result is higher than or equal to your opponent's skill, opponent is missed. Okay, so we want this to be higher than her skill, so higher than 8. Because her skill is 8, which it's not, so she didn't miss. So she's hit me. 4 points from your stamina. Okay, so that puts me down to 16 because she hit me. Whoops, 16. Okay, then we do it again, obviously. Okay, so let's keep going. So we want this to be, well, we're guaranteed a hit, aren't we? Because this is less than 12. So that's another 4 points from her stamina. That puts her down to 3. And then we need this to be above 8. Which it is, good. So she missed. Okay, so she missed. Okay, now we're rolling for me again. So we need this to be below 12, which is guaranteed to be. And that means she's dead. So, and then we don't, and as she's dead, she can't return fire, can she? Because, you know, because it says if your opponent is still alive after I hit, then fire is returned. So she's dead, so she can't return fire. So that's that. So let's go back to 321. That's the end of the combat. That's much easier to do than the hand-to-hand combat. Probably why I chose, but I sort of instinctively remembered it was easier to do than the attack strength and all that jazz. Anyway, so we defeated her. So that's the end of Zera Gross. I'll just put her surname there as well. Why not? Zera Gross, and she's dead. So that's that. We defeated her, so turn to 165. Here we go. Zera is immobile. The Vidilink is on fire. The desk is riddled with bullets. Looking around, you find nothing of note within the room. Turn to 126. Okay, 126. Okay, you leave the room via another door and find yourself in what is obviously a command room. Huge video screens and floor-to-ceiling computer banks adorn the walls. Vidilinks are set around at irregular intervals. It all ticks over and flashes quietly to itself. The screens show production figures of Satofil D in tons per month. See, that's another thing about the metric system. I just, if you're going to use the metric system, I mean, because ton with a double N like that is a metric ton, which is 1,000 kilograms. I mean, 1,000 kilograms should be a megagram. I mean, it just doesn't make sense that that they call it a ton, and they're only calling it a ton because they know that the proper ton, which is 2,240 pounds or 2,000 pounds in America for some reason, which is the short ton, but 2,240 pounds, they know that has a sort of belief. It's sort of, when you think of a ton, you think of a very large weight. So it's like they had to steal the word ton from the imperial system and sort of, and try to ram it into the metric system to try and have this sort of continuity, when really it should be a megagram, because a ton is 1,000 kilograms and therefore 1,000 grams, which is 1,000,000 grams, which is a megagram, which is a capital M and then small g, megagram. So, as opposed to a lowercase m, which would be a milligram. So, the very fact that they're calling a megagram a ton, or metric ton, quote unquote, is sort of proof that they're still, that the imperial system is still sort of a natural system of measurement, because you're thinking of the word ton as a really big weight. And so they had to sort of ram that into the metric system because it's still sort of fixed in people's heads as being, oh, that weighs a ton, it's really big. So they had to have a ton in the metric system. But there shouldn't be, because it should be the megagram. So I just don't like the metric system. It's just sort of, if they're going to use the metric system for weight, at least be consistent with it. At least say megagram and not ton. I'm not sort of having a go at this book for using that, because it's just a book and they're just using the words. But I'm speaking in general, like the people who started all the metric system. and if they're going to start the metric system, at least be consistent with it and call it a megagram, because that's what it is. 1,000 kilograms would be a megagram, and 1,000 of them would be a gigagram or a gigagram, however you want to pronounce it. It was originally giga, but then they changed it to giga. And 1,000 of them would be a teragram. At least be consistent. But then they've mucked it all up because 1,000 of their metric tons would be a kiloton. So what should be a giga or a gigaton is actually a kiloton, which is more confusing. The whole purpose of the metric system was saying, oh look, we love the metric system, it's all based on powers of 10, so there's no confusion with like 16 ounces to a pound or whatever and all those silly numbers. And yet they've made more confusion. So a kiloton is 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000 grams, even though it's kilo. It's just, if they're going to make the metric system, at least sort of have it consistent and less confusing, because the whole purpose of the metric system was to have it less confusing. That's why they like the Celsius scale, because it's 0 to 100 instead of 32 to 212. It's less confusing. Well, that's what they say. It's less confusing. Although I actually prefer Fahrenheit. It's just one of those things that just annoys me. Anyway, obviously, because I've just been moaning about it for 5 minutes. Anyway, enough of that. I'll just start again. Anyway, you leave the room via another door and find yourself in what is obviously a command room. Huge vidi screens and floor-to-ceiling computer banks adorn the walls. Vidi links are set around at irregular intervals. It all ticks over and flashes quietly to itself. The screens show production figures of Satophil D in megagrams per month. See, I'm confused already. Satophil D in megagrams per month. Arrival and departure times of helijet flights between the island and mainland, and the exact location of the asteroid on which all of the drugs are manufactured. This is obviously not the complete operation. What you need to take out now is a production asteroid. 10 to 87. Okay, brilliant. And they even say, people confuse weight with mass. I mean, with the imperial measurement, they didn't consider other planets' gravity. They just thought, they didn't consider that gravity could be different on different parts of the Earth. Like on the top of Mount Everest, the gravity is slightly more than at the bottom of the Mariana Trench because there's more mass between you and the centre of the Earth. So, but in the imperial measurement system, like the pound or the ounce is the measurement of weight, and that's also a measurement of force, because that's what weight is. It's the force that something is exerting onto the ground. Whereas with grams, that's a measure of mass. It's not a measure of weight, and yet people just casually just say, oh yeah, it's 1,000 grams in weight. It's mass. The weight is, the metric thing for weight is the Newton, which is mass times whatever the gravity is in meters per second squared. The average is near enough 9.81 meters per second squared on Earth, but obviously, as I just said, it changes depending on where you are. So if you're at the top of the if you're at the top of Mount Everest, the acceleration is slightly more, and at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, pretend there's no water there, it would be slightly less. Obviously, the water would make it even less than that because of the water resistance, or the drag of the water. Anyway, but the bottom line is that g, lowercase g, changes. So. But anyway, the unit of weight makes more sense in terms of the pound or the stone. But they say they give weight with the metric system in terms of kilograms, but that's not the weight, that's your mass. Your weight is in newtons, but everyone makes that mistake. Again, if they're going to use the metric system because it's easier and less confusing, again, they've made it more confusing because I can't imagine many people know. If you just told if you just told a layman that, oh yeah, that's not your weight. Your weight isn't 100 kilos. It's 980 newtons. They go, what? They wouldn't know what you're talking about. But that's the correct thing. And the whole point of the metric system was it was an easier system to make it less confusing, but it's made confusing again because people confuse mass with weight. If they're going to use the metric system, they should, use the correct one and say they should give people's weights in newtons. That's the whole point of it. Anyway, we're turning into 87. I really am a complete bore, aren't I? I know, but that's just how I am. Anyway, you return to the mainland and then rocket out to the asteroid belt. If your own spacecraft has been destroyed, you will have to hire another at a cost of 2,000 kopecks. If you cannot afford this, then you have failed. And that's the end of the book. But I haven't, so that's that. When you approach the environs of the Drug Runner's asteroid, the command screen on your ship flashes a message: minefield surrounding target. You look out to see a thickly clustered globular minefield set around the production asteroid, a very tricky proposition. Will you shoot your way through the mines, turn to 48, or carefully manoeuvre through instead, turn to 19? Okay, here's the picture that corresponds with the paragraph. There we are. Okay. Okay, how many shields do we have? Okay, we have 5 shields. We are going to... We're going to shoot our way through the mines and turn to 48. Yeah, if you have a certain number, if you have lots of shields, I haven't lost any, I do recommend shooting through. If you don't, if you have something like 2 shields, you're going to have to maneuver carefully because you might lose shields. Okay, so we're going to go to 48. Okay, you sight up on one of the mines, a flat disc-shaped piece of potential energy just waiting to blow you to atoms, and let fire with your phasers. The mine explodes far more violently than you expected, the impact hitting your ship even from the supposedly safe distance from which you chose to fire. You lose 1 shield. Puts me down to 4. I can do 5 minus 1 in my head because I'm very clever. Okay. Fortunately, though, thanks to the defenders' incompetence in laying out their minefield, the mine has set off a chain reaction through the rest of the field. They all explode, giving you a clear passage through to the asteroid. Turn to 312. Okay, this will be the last paragraph. 312. The asteroid is covered with batteries of phasers, and having been alerted to your presence by your passage through the minefield, is using them in an attempt to deprive you of your life. You will have to fight these outer defences before attempting to land. If you have any smart missiles left, you may launch them. For each smart missile deployed, the asteroid will lose 2 shields. Asteroid defences: weapon strength 9, shield 6. If you win, you may either dock at the main entrance, turn to 117, or at one of the few emergency airlocks set into the asteroid surface, turn to 273. Okay, I will deal with that in the next video. So I'm going to put the next paragraph as 312, and in the next part, I should be able to finish this book in the next part. Yeah, almost certainly. I always find the futuristic sort of fighting fantasy books almost a sort of contradiction there, almost an oxymoron there, because I always think of fighting fantasy as like the swords and sorcery. But anyway, I always find the futuristic fighting fantasy books always quite short and easy to do, especially if you have the perfect route laid out like I do. Anyway, yeah, so in the next video I will complete the book, and at the start we'll be dealing with these asteroid defences. Thanks for listening to my waffling and my complaining about the the metric system. I wish it were a Metroid system. Complaining about the metric system. Thanks for that, for listening. If you didn't skip it, thank you. But that's just how I feel. I don't mind if you like the metric system, but I personally hate it. Anyway, it's like another thing I do disagree with is the decimalisation of the currency. Um, it's just sort of the currency we have now is just, what's the word? It's just sort of barren and plain. There's no sort of personality to it. You know, the old currency, there were nicknames for the coins. There was a culture with it, and it's just now sort of barren, and all you have is pounds and pence, and that's the end of it. It's like there's nothing interesting about it. There's no culture. It's just, that's another reason why I hate the metric system. It's just there's no culture with it. It didn't grow up with a culture. It's sort of alien to how people, you know, how the measurements took on how they took on a form. You know, they were part of the culture and part of society. The metric system is just sort of made up by someone sitting in front of a desk. You know, it's just how I feel. Anyway, so I would like to go back to pre-decimalisation of currency as well, and have 240 pence in a pound. You know, but that's never going to happen, is it? But in a perfect world, it would. Anyway, well, they're perfect for me. Anyway, so thank you for listening to my waffling, and in the next part, I will complete the book. I suppose, I mean, I do get sort of comments, which I'm not going to call them nagging, but I do feel like I'm nagged. Oh, please do the next book, do Rings of Kether. You know, I mean, I did a video which I wanted to do, which was that Master System game I did recently, and I got comments saying, "Boo, we don't want any video games, we want more books." And if you remember, I started doing videos for my pleasure. I don't make any money or any monetary gain from this whatsoever. Whether they put adverts on my videos or not now, I don't know, because I don't really watch my own videos, but if they do, I don't get anything from them. This is purely voluntary. I do it for my own fun. You know, I don't, you know, if other people watch them, you know, it's up to them really, but I don't mind if you watch or you don't watch. I would still put them on here. So I don't really like being nagged into doing videos. The videos I originally wanted to do were Master System games, because they're the ones that I wanted to show people how sort of, you know, the favourite games I had as a child, you know, and my favourite books, like these ones. If I get nagged into doing these books, which if you nag me into doing them and say, oh yes, do more books, and the books, especially the ones that I don't really like, such as the futuristic ones, because, you know, I don't really like the futuristic ones so much. If I'm going to do these ones, then you're going to have to put up with a bit of waffling, because I have to sort of make it interesting for myself. So that's the trade-off. If you want me to do these books, you're going to have to put up with me moaning about the metric system and decimalisation and the plural of vertebra and antenna, which are vertebrae and antennae respectively. Anyway, enough of that. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.